First off, I just want to thank Leanna and some of the other people who spoke, like Bernard and Sandra and y'all. And I just want to say one thing about that they all have in common is that they've all stepped out ahead of the curve. They're not waiting for somebody else to do the job. So it's good to have people like that who are willing to take the initiative now. And as they said, you and us, we are the we to make this happen. I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I kind of started off in this situation in two ways. In one way, I was in the physical aspect of developing because I was a rehabber on the south side. I would purchase small properties and then rehab them and rent them out to CHA or residents or either sell them. And then on the other side, I was doing urban planning research, such as this study right here that I did with Harvard University and the Ford Foundation, the Urban Institute. And it was kind of like this study when the last of the residents in Bronzeville were moved out of the Ida B. Wells Madden Park complex. It was then that I started to think, next slide. I started to think about identity, history, and because I felt that the last little bit of Bronzeville's history was leaving the neighborhood. So I want to talk to you today about the importance of identity. Identity, the three basic pillars of community development are identity, sustainability, and mobility. Identity is who you are. So I wanted to talk to you today about if you don't know who you are or where you've been, you don't know where you're going. So I've heard a lot of things tonight. I've heard a lot tonight about all the different various projects, and this kind of ties it all together. So, as I said, identity, sustainability, mobility. Identity is where you are, where you've been. If you think about Chinatown, if you think about Greektown, if you think about Devon Avenue, if you think about Pilsen, all of these neighborhoods that you immediately get a brand in your head. You know immediately where you're going, what you're going to get from when you go. You're going to get, if you go to Chinatown, you're going to get an authentic experience of Chinese culture. If you go to Greektown, you know you're going to get some Greek food. When you go to Devon Avenue, you know you're going to get an authentic experience of Indian culture and Indian food. So the identity of these neighborhoods is very strong. And all of these neighborhoods, this is one of the reasons, that's how identity leads to sustainability or economic development. Because once that your identity is your cultural heritage, your history, and that is your export. That is what you have to sell. Bronzeville is sitting on a rich historical legacy. Okay? Bronzeville is one of the most important and famous neighborhoods in the United States, and it's sitting on a rich historical legacy. And many of the problems that we've talked about today have to do with the fact that if you're separated from your past and you don't know who you are, and you've forgotten your historical legacy, that's when you experience some of the problems that we experience here in Bronzeville. Bronzeville has been said, okay, there's been a safety perception. That can be explained by the fact that Bronzeville has lost touch with its historical past and who it is. And if you don't know who you are, you don't know where you're going. Bronzeville needs to be a cultural and entertainment destination. So it needs a cultural export. It needs to be able to attract. So it needs that brand. So that when you think of Bronzeville, just like when you think of Chinatown, you know what you're getting when you go to Bronzeville. So Bronzeville needs economic development. It needs some opportunities to sell, to have a product to sell. Okay, Bronzeville, the businesses in Bronzeville, traditionally retail businesses need a historical or some kind of cultural backdrop within which to sell the retail. The pursuit of retail itself and the pursuit of money itself has a certain, let's just say that it needs something to soften it up. It needs a historical backdrop within which to sell. So, Bronzeville needs something that transmits to the children of Bronzeville the ideas of perseverance, stick-to-itiveness, entrepreneurship, and other things that lets them know that if they use these values and employ these values, that's how they can get, they can use these things to get where they're going. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about the power of identity and how identity solves all these questions. Bronzeville has a lot of residents and businesses who've invested a lot in Bronzeville, and they need something to show them that Bronzeville is willing to, that the stakeholders in Bronzeville are investing and recognize the investment these businesses and residents have made and are doing something to push them forward. So that's when we came up with the Bronzeville Legends Identity Initiative. What it is, it's a creative placemaking campaign that leverages Bronzeville's historical past and rich historical legacy as the home of some of the most important and eminent performers and politicians, artists, things like that. It's a creative placemaking campaign that uses large-scale commercial quality advertising, the language of large-scale commercial quality advertising, but only instead of selling for the Gap or selling for McDonald's or selling liquor or cigarettes or things like that. It sells the history of the community and reestablishes the identity of the community and gives the community historical exploits so that you know where you're going. For instance, this is a poster of Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson was the heavyweight champion of Rhode Island, so he lived in Bronzeville. So this is an example of a large-scale commercial quality and something that sells the sizzle. We've been talking a lot about the nuts and bolts of the state today. We need something that sells the sizzle that gives everybody a psychological, wow, you need to be able to look up to your legends and build your future based on the past of all these great legends that we have. Go to the next slide. So it also includes, in Bronzeville, in order to create a Bronzeville Renaissance, we have a lot of disparate efforts in art. We've heard a lot about art today, but we haven't heard about the style book. In order to create a Bronzeville Renaissance, one of the things that made Harlem have this Renaissance was that the artists began to work from the same style book. They all began to work with each other, and they all agreed, hey, let's get this style going. And then they each reinforced each other, and that unity caused them to, once people see that you got unity, then they're drawn to that. So in addition to the large-scale qualities, large-scale commercial ads for the identity of the neighborhood, you also can have things like this. You have simple stores, facades where Helga Jackson used to be here. This is an example of just a very inexpensive way to, and what all of these have in common is, next slide. Here's another one. Louis Armstrong will be playing at some of the legendary blues clubs like the Savoy Ballroom on 47th and Cape Drive, the Royal Gardens. That's an example of a Louis Armstrong photo mural installation on the side of the building. Large scale, just like that little child is looking up to Louis Armstrong, it gives the psychological impression, wow, it creates and reinstills pride, it improves the safety perception of the neighborhood. The basic idea is this. When you go to a museum exhibit, after you go to the museum exhibit, it's like a maze, you walk through the exhibit, you see all the paintings and stuff. You're then encouraged to, and you're squeezed through and forced through the gift shop, where you're encouraged to spend some money and lighten that wall. The idea here to strengthen the commercial corridors of Bronzeville is to make Bronzeville into somewhat of an outdoor museum and make the commercial corridors the gift shop. So this would, you understand? So if you've got big pieces like this that excite people up, This would attract foot traffic and let people downtown know, hey, this is the blues capital of the world. This is the jazz capital of the world. Let me go down here and check out some of these murals. Let me ride my bike down here and check out some of these murals. Let me take a walk and check out some of these murals. When these people come back from the blues festival, let me go down here and see some of the original blues. Next slide. Okay, a good example would be the cows exhibit, which were just some simple cows that they put downtown, decorated in different ways, but they had a simple theme, cows. The city of Chicago was able to increase their tourism revenue by $100 million because people were attracted from all over the world in the city to look at these cows. These cows increase retail sales per square foot, which is in reality what all retail stores are looking at. I needed to increase my retail sales per square foot. It does this because it increases foot traffic. When you increase your foot traffic, if I'm coming down here to look at this mural and these cows, I start walking around, I look at the cows, then after a while I say, let me pop in here and get myself some dinner or a shake or check out some music because I'm already here. This is how art exhibits increase retail sales per square foot and how branding a neighborhood and making it specific, recapturing its identity and making sure that everybody works on the same style, from the same style book, can attract and give you a cultural export, something to export and attract tourism and revenue that you need into the neighborhood. The other thing, keep going. Okay, that's sponsored by a business account. Okay, I was telling you about the historical ambience and how retail needs a historical ambience, and they do this all the time. It's called retail adjacency, where you need something adjacent to the retail product within which to sell your retail. So if you have something, in order to soften the image of the product, you need a cultural ambience, a cultural backdrop within which to drop your retail. That is what we're trying to create here, a cultural backdrop within to place all these businesses and all this economic activity that's going on. This is how identity leads to economic development or sustainability, which also then leads to mobility, transportation, things like that. Here's an example of the historical ambience of the Fulton Fish Market in New York before, and here's after, how they used the historical ambience of the fish market to create some shops, and now they've got a reason, to sell the shops, to sell stuff. Now here's an example of an unsuccessful effort where here was Maxwell Street before, really vibrant. Maxwell Street full of people. Here's what happens in an unsuccessful effort when you sanitize a street, remove the people, take away the flavor, because when we talk about identity, what we're talking about is flavor. If all you have is, you've got meat and potatoes in the soup, but you don't have no flavor, you understand? This is what happens. When you take away the flavor and replace it with statues and fake flavor, and you have that vibrant street, this is what you get. Next slide. That's Maxwell Street now. That's what happens when you take away the flavor. This is why the flavor must be restored with these large-scale photo murals that remind the neighborhood of what the flavor of Bronzeville is. And that's why when I was first, I was a field manager for that study on the Ida B. Wells Band Park, and I said to myself, you know what, they're taking away the flavor. Okay, next. Now, so I really like a lot of art projects and all that, but I just want to make some distinctions about art. Now, what this is not is a visual, what the Bronzeville Retail Initiative is Legends Retail Initiative is these visually busy standalone street murals that you see on the streets that take a whole lot of time to digest, and you have to stop your car and get out to understand what's going on from the unique vision of this particular artist. That's not what it is. Next. It's visually simple, uncluttered, repetitive reminders that if I go drive by one street, it's very simple, so that if I'm driving by and I see Louis Armstrong, then I drive over here and I see Mahalia Jackson, I can start to put it together in my head without even having to get out of my car. Oh, Louis Armstrong up here. This is the home of African American historical culture. Things like that. Next. Now, another thing I really like, it is wonderful that they do this, but what this is not is decorating underpasses. For some reason, Chicago's in love with decorating underneath train stations where nobody can see it. That's not what this is. Go ahead. This is another decorating another underpass. It's beautiful, but no, very few people get to see it. That does help with safety perception and things like that. Next. This is another thing. Just go past that. Okay. Keep going. Is that okay? Go back a little bit, John. You go use that other button to go back. Yes. Hey Kim, did you go back?
Yeah, go to preview.
Okay, I just wanted to show you these three slides. I'll just use that one, that's fine. This is what I talk about when I say that this campaign uses the same commercial, large-scale commercial and quality visual language that has been adopted successfully by corporations for years to sell product. And there's no reason why the same large-scale commercial quality and style visual language cannot be used to sell the community history, identity, flavor. Next. Okay. So this is a Nat King Cole on a, it lets you know if you're driving by, hey, there's Nat King Cole. Wow, he lived here. Nat King Cole is a historic resident of the neighborhood. Next. These are just more examples. Lorraine Hansberry raised him in the sun while living in Bronzeville. If the kids don't know this solves one of the problems about violence and knowing who you are and where you're going. Because what this does is, we're not just talking about famous people here. Oh, look, Louis Armstrong was famous. I'm talking about, this communicates to the children, look, here are the qualities of black excellence, perseverance, stick-to-itiveness, all these other qualities that got these people to where they are. This is what happens, man, if you stick to it. If you have a plan, if you're about something, you can end up being like this. You could write a book. There's Ida B. Wells, there's Louis Armstrong. Bronzeville had the first black female aviator, airplane. She drove airplanes. She's from here. I forgot her name, Bessie something. Bessie something. The kids don't, nobody knows, the kids don't know this. They need to know this. This needs to be reinforced in their mind. This, as I said, solves these problems. It gives a cultural heritage. It reminds you of Bronzeville's cultural heritage, reminds everybody else of it. It gives people a reason to come here. And it transmits these values to the children. Okay, these are just more examples. Go ahead. Next. Okay, that's another one, Singer Sam Cooke right there. Next. That's